Some initial vocabulary for polynomial functions are the following. So the first one would be a monomial. So a mono means one. So a monomial means that there's one term. So one term means that there's no addition or subtraction. There's just one figure. So for example, 5 is an example of a monomial. There's one term. 2x is also a monomial. So even though there's two separate things, a 2 and an x, they're not attached through addition or subtraction, so they're one term. Okay, and 7x squared yz, okay, that's still a monomial because there's one term there. There's no addition or subtraction. Next, we have a polynomial. Poly means more than one, so a polynomial means that there's more than one term. Okay, so there can be any number of terms, just more than one. So examples would be x plus 2. Okay, there we have two terms. 3x squared plus 5x plus 9 is another polynomial because there's more than one term. The degree of a polynomial is the highest exponent. So when we talk about the degree, we talk about the highest exponent. So there could be multiple exponents, but the highest one is going to be the degree. So an example would be if I add 5x to the 7th plus x to the 6th. There's two exponents there, the 7 and the 6. The highest one is going to be our degree. So here our degree would be 7. Alright, so if we look at these examples, the first function that we have, y equals 5x squared plus 7x minus 9. The highest degree we have is a 2. Okay, and the next one, the highest degree is a 3. And the next one, 9x plus 18. The highest degree is a 1. So if you just have an x with no exponent, the exponent is automatically a 1. And then in the last one, we have 8 as our highest exponent. Okay, so if you had something that didn't have an x at all, if you just had the number 5, for instance, the exponent would be a 0 because there's no x in that example. Okay, so whenever we have a polynomial, we want to make sure that we write it in standard form first before we classify it or try to simplify it. So standard form just means its highest to lowest exponent. So highest to lowest exponent. So we just want to put these in the correct order. So we want to put these into standard form. So we have the first one, so y equals. So the x squared is going to go first, then we're going to have the minus x, and then the plus 2. And the second one, again, the highest exponent is going to go first, so we're going to put the x to the third first, so we're going to put negative 3x to the third. Then we have the x squared term, so plus 5x squared, and then plus 50. Okay, now on this one, the highest exponent would be the x to the 7th. So we have 3x to the 7th first. Then we'll have 12x to the 4th minus x minus 1. Okay, and then the final one, the first exponent we're going to use is x to the 4th. So we have 4x to the 4th, then minus x squared plus 6x plus 25. Okay, so we always want to make sure that we put it into standard form first. Once we have it in standard form, then we can go ahead and we can classify. The way you classify a polynomial is by the degree and the number of terms. So the degree is the highest exponent. So if you look at the chart, the degree of 0. So if there's no x in the problem at all, that is a constant. So it's just a number, like 5. The number of terms for that is 1. So when there's one term, it's called a monomial. So if we wanted to look at that first row and we wanted to name 5, 5 is a constant monomial. So you name the degree first and then the number of terms. Okay, so in the second one, okay, if we look at the degree of 1, okay, it's a linear. So the example is x plus 4. So there's two terms there. So since the degree is 1 and there's two terms, this is called a linear binomial. Okay, so if we look at the second one, okay, we look at number 2. The degree is a 2. Okay, that's called a quadratic. We've seen those before. Okay, 4x squared is our example, and that's only one term. So we would call this a quadratic monomial. A degree of 3 is called a cubic, and when there's 3 terms, it's called a trinomial, because 3 is tri. The degree of 4 is a quartic, and a degree of 5 is a quintic. Okay, anything higher than a degree of 5, we would just say it's a that many degree. So for instance, if I had a 6th degree, I would just say it's a 6th degree, whatever it is. So again, if the degree is between 0 and 5, you're going to use the words here: constant, linear, quadratic, cubic, quartic, quintic. But anything higher than 5, we just say 6th degree, 7th degree, 8th degree, whatever it is. For the number of terms, we only talk about 1, 2, and 3. So 1 is a monomial, 2 terms is a binomial, right? 2 is bi. 3 is trinomial, because 3 is tri. Anything higher than 3, we just say it's a polynomial of that many terms. So the last example, where we have the degree of 5, and if you look at the example, there's 4 terms. So it's a quintic because we have a degree of 5, but there's no name that we're going to use for more than 3 terms, so we'll just say it's a polynomial of 4 terms. So you could have something that had a degree of 9 and has 10 terms, and we can say it's a 9th degree polynomial of 10 terms. So anything that's higher, has a higher degree, higher than 5, we just say it's that number degree. Any number of terms that's higher than 3, we say it's a polynomial of that many terms. Okay, so if we look at these 2 examples, we want to first write it in standard form and then classify by degree and number of terms. So it's really important that we put it in standard form first, and you do any simplifying that you can. So if things can be simplified, it's going to change how they are classified. So for instance, if I look at this first one, first I'm going to put it into standard form. So that's going to be 5x to the 4th plus 3x cubed minus x. Okay, I can't combine anything, so I leave that. That's standard form. My highest degree is a 4, so this is a quartic. And then there's 3 terms, so it's a trinomial. So this is a quartic trinomial. Okay, now if I look at b here, again, I'm going to put it in standard form first. So negative 4x to the 5th goes first, then plus 2x squared. So now I have 3 and 10, which can combine together to give me 13. So what's happened is I went from having 4 terms to now I have 3 terms. So when you go to name this, you have to name it based off of the simplified version. So it's not 4 terms anymore, it's 3. So when we name this, its degree is 5. So this is going to be a quintic. And it's a trinomial because there's 3 terms. Okay, so let's just go back and name the ones that we just did earlier in standard form. So the first one in red, that would be a quadratic because the degree is 2. And there's 3 terms, so it's a trinomial. Okay, the one to its right, the green one, highest degree is a 3, so that's a cubic. And there's 3 terms, so it's a cubic trinomial. Okay, the next green one has a highest degree of 7, so that doesn't have a name that we would call it. So we would say it's a 7th degree. And you can write 7th as the number 7th instead of writing out the word 7th. It's a 7th degree, and there's 4 terms, so it's a 7th degree polynomial. So I'm just going to write poly of 4 terms because it doesn't have a name that we call it. And then the last one in purple, highest degree is a 4, so that's a quartic. And there's 4 terms, so it's a quartic polynomial of 4 terms.